I just got done reading Stephen King's The Dark Tower series, and I thought of the most original idea that any human being has ever come up with. Let's rank them from worst to best. These are my own opinions, they may be different from yours, and granted, the lowest rating I gave any of these books is a 4 out of 5, so they're all magnificent. But getting straight into 8th place, I have The Wind Through the Keyhole. The Wind Through the Keyhole, in my opinion, is a 4 out of 5 stars. It is not a bad book by any means, but it's not really a Dark Tower book. Are Roland, Eddie, Susannah, Jake, and Oi in this book? Yes. But really it's a story that Roland is telling his quartet, and it's basically a lullaby that his mother once told him, and so it's a story within a story within a story, really, really weird book, but it's not really a Dark Tower book. That being said, it is extremely weird, and I do love this book. I think it's great, but for me, it comes in last place because it's not really a Dark Tower book, and also I just prefer the original series over this DLC of a novel. I do also think that that book is overhated. I think it's a solid 4 out of 5, but I totally get why people aren't too fond of it. But in 7th place, I have Wolves of the Calla. This book is really good. I gave it 4.25 stars. The biggest problem that I have with it is that it has some pretty significant pacing issues, and it all takes place in one location, the Calla. It takes the Alfred Hitchcock route of setting up this big bad, these huge stakes, and we are slowly building to a climax where those stakes are coming to fruition, and we're learning more and more about this evil that is present in the land and what they do to the children of the Calla, and that's set up from the prologue. And so these big bads are very scary, and they are something to be threatened by, but about halfway through the book, you kind of forget who the big bad is of this story, because you go down this rabbit hole of Stephen King's expanded universe, and while that stuff is really cool, I just kind of wanted to get back to the Dark Tower story. This is also the first book that Stephen King wrote after having his accident in 1999, and so the writing style of this book is vastly different. You do get used to it in the next 2 books, but I think this book suffers from being the first of that different writing style, and so I think that may also have played into why I didn't like it that much. And by not liking it that much, I mean comparatively speaking. This book is wonderful. The ending is incredible. It actually blew my socks off. Very, very good book, but of the original series, it's just my least favorite. And in 6th place, I have The Dark Tower. The Dark Tower is an incredible book. A lot of people who have read through this series complain about the ending, that it just didn't work for them. For me, it absolutely does. I love how this book brings a finite ending to the series. But the biggest problem that I have with this book is that it has really bad pacing issues. That being said, the stuff that happens in the book, plus that last 100 pages being absolutely wonderful, makes this a 4.25 out of 5 for me. But the first half of the book all takes place in one location, and then there are some very strange character choices in how some characters exit the story. And I just wasn't a fan of that, but there's also this really amazing sequence where 2 characters are going underneath the castle and they're being chased by something, and that entire sequence is incredible. The good of this book completely outweighs the bad in my opinion, and so that's why I gave it a 4.25, and it is my 6th book in this ranking. In 5th place, I have a book that's probably going to ruffle some feathers for it being this low on the list, and that is Song of Susannah. I think this book is almost perfect. I gave it 4.75 out of 5 stars. I just prefer the next 4. This book is non-stop action. From page 1, we are immediately on the go. It's picking up directly from Wolves of the Calla. Wolves of the Calla, Song of Susannah, and The Dark Tower are kind of the only trilogy in the series. It picks up directly from Wolves of the Calla, and it is non-stop for the next 400 pages. And there is some dark, and twisted stuff that happens in this book, but there's also incredibly entertaining shootout sequences and time travel and dimensional travel, and it's just so much fun. We meet some new characters that cross over from Stephen King's expanded universe from other novels, and seeing those characters was really cool as well. This book is just wonderful. It's almost perfect in my opinion. I do just prefer the next 4, and that's why Song of Susannah is in my 5th place. And in 4th place, I have The Drawing of the Three. A lot of people who have read through this series consider this book to be their least favorite. I wholeheartedly disagree. It does suffer from this issue that I've complained about 2 previous books in this series having, and that is it almost entirely takes place in one location. It doesn't really, I won't spoil that for you, but for the most part, it is a one-location book. This story is about Roland Deschain drawing the rest of the characters that we are going to be with for the rest of the series, and we get to experience their backstories, why they are the way that they are, the terrible things that they've done, and you're not supposed to like these characters, but by the end of the book, you just love them. Stephen King is a character writer first. If he doesn't have good characters, he will not write a story. And so while this story is kind of lacking in plot, it makes up for it in character depth and understanding who Eddie Dean is, and understanding who Susannah is, and understanding their character motivations, and this book is just wonderful. 4.75 out of 5 stars. People who don't like this book, I don't understand you. I think this is a wonderful novel. And in 3rd place, I have The Gunslinger. This is the book that started it all, and it is incredible. At its core, it's a Western, but it does have a lot of fantasy elements, and the blending of those two is something that had never really been done before at this point in time. The man in black fled across the desert and the gunslinger followed. That is the opening line of this book, and it is one of the greatest opening lines to any book that has ever been written. And the story really is about that. It's about Roland Deschain chasing the man in black across the desert, and he meets some kooky and crazy characters, and he comes across some wild and drastic situations, and he meets new characters that will come back in later books, and this book is just amazing. I've said it before, but if you ask me on the right day, this could be a 5-star book, and it may even be my favorite in the series. But I do have 2 others coming up next that I just think are actual masterpieces. The first of which being The Wastelands. The Wastelands opens with one of the greatest action scenes in the entire series. It is heart-pumping, blood pressure rising good. It is wonderful, and it's non-stop for the next 600 pages. You get to know more about these characters and understand where they come from, and some characters fall in love and we have some romance there, but we also have one of the most haunting sequences that I think Stephen King has ever written, involving a young boy being in an abandoned house. And if you've read the book, you know what I'm talking about, and if you haven't read the book, you've got to read this series. It also ends with one of the craziest cliffhangers I've ever read in a book. This book just has it all, man. 5 out of 5 stars, no questions. And then of course, my number 1 book on this list, as well as perhaps my favorite book of all time as of recording this video, Wizard and Glass. Wizard and Glass directly picks up from the cliffhanger that The Wasteland leaves us on. And after those loose ends are resolved, Roland Deschain and the quartet sit down, and Roland begins to tell them his backstory for the next 600 pages. And what we get to read here is some of the greatest literature I have ever read in my entire life. We get introduced into new characters, we get introduced into a new big bad, a brand new world, more protagonists, more antagonists. He's essentially writing an entirely different book within this 900-page novel, and it is flawless. It's about Roland Deschain meeting Susan Delgado, the one and only woman he has ever truly loved, and their tragic love story. Reading this book, I laughed, I cried, It shattered my heart. It put the pieces back together and shattered my heart again. And that's pretty much what I'm looking for in what I consider to be a perfect novel. If you're thinking about reading through the Dark Tower series for the first time, you have to read through it just to get to this book. And I know tons of people complain about it just being a backstory and whatever, but that backstory, that book within this book, is so beautiful. To date, it's the only book that has ever broken my rating system. 6 out of 5 stars. There is not a single word, paragraph, sentence, even letter that I would remove from this book. It is genuinely flawless. And that's my ranking for the entire Dark Tower series. If you've read these books before, let me know what your rating would be down in the comments. And if you haven't read these books before, what are some other series that I should really check out? I'm reading through one right now. It's going to be a video that's coming out probably in a couple of months. But yeah, I have loved these books so much. I truly would love to hear your ranking if you've read them before. And with that being said, hope you have a nice day. Especially you, Steven. Steven, have a nice day.